If you have a cat or a dog, you've probably noticed something. They never wear clothes. They sprint across grass. They run through the rain. They spend their entire lives completely naked, and it never bothers them. They don't blush because their bodies are exposed. They don't feel awkward because someone saw them. And they definitely don't have that nightmare of realizing they forgot to put on pants before leaving the house, and wishing the ground would just swallow them whole. Out of all the animals that have ever lived on Earth, only one species feels ashamed of its own natural body. That species is you and me. Most of us assume the explanation is obvious. Humans developed a sense of shame, so we invented clothes to cover ourselves. But what if the story is actually backwards? What if we didn't invent clothes because we felt shame? What if clothes slowly taught our brains what shame even was? For a very, very long time in human history, being naked wasn't embarrassing. It was one of our greatest evolutionary advantages. So today, let's rewind the clock and see how this ordinary piece of fabric ended up rewriting the human mind. Let's go back about 2 million years. Our ancestors were still roaming the African savanna. Covered in thick body hair, they looked much like any other large mammal. Then something happened that changed the fate of our entire species. Our ancestors did something that, at the time, must have seemed almost suicidal. They lost their fur. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? On the savanna, fur was your insulation, your protection, your armor. Getting rid of it was like throwing away your shield. And yet, that single evolutionary leap helped transform humans into one of the most formidable hunters Earth has ever seen. Have you ever wondered why people can keep moving under the blazing midday sun, while lions and cheetahs are forced to collapse into the shade, panting? The answer is hidden in our bare skin. Thick fur works like wearing a heavy winter coat all day. It's great for keeping heat in. It's terrible when you're trying to get rid of it. As soon as an animal starts running, that coat becomes a trap. But after our ancestors lost most of their body hair, their skin became covered with sweat glands. The harder they ran, the more they sweated. And as that sweat evaporated, it carried heat away astonishingly fast. That made an entirely new hunting strategy possible. Don't outrun your prey, just keep following it. An antelope or a wild horse can sprint at incredible speeds, but only for a few minutes. Eventually, it has to stop and cool down. Otherwise, it risks literally overheating itself to death. Humans didn't need to be faster. We just had to keep coming, hour after hour, sometimes day after day. Little by little, the animal grew hotter, more exhausted, more desperate, until eventually, it simply collapsed. Scientists call this persistence hunting. Bare-skinned humans used endurance, not speed, to become apex predators. Back then, being naked wasn't a sign of weakness. It was proof of strength. Imagine a hunter standing before the tribe, his skin darkened by the sun, his body completely uncovered. Everyone knew exactly what that meant. He had just run dozens of miles beneath the scorching sky, and chances were he was about to bring home enough meat to feed everyone. For roughly 200,000 years, this was simply life. People hunted naked, raised children naked, migrated across continents naked. Nobody looked at another person's body and thought it was shameful. Being unclothed wasn't unusual. It was normal. It was unquestioned. But if nakedness was such a powerful advantage, what happened that forced our ancestors to abandon an instinct shaped over hundreds of thousands of years? What could possibly make humans peel the skin off another animal and wrap it around themselves instead? And here's the strangest part. Scientists managed to estimate when humans first started wearing clothes using one of the most disgusting little creatures on Earth: lice. To understand why, we have to start with a climate catastrophe that nearly wiped us out. Around 170,000 years ago, Earth's climate became wildly unstable. Ice ages came and went. The world grew colder. The hunters, who had once dominated the warm African plains, began pushing into new lands, north, into Eurasia. And what greeted them wasn't another savanna. It was a world of relentless wind, endless snow, and brutal cold. A body built to shed heat was suddenly a death sentence. Without thick fur, a naked human couldn't survive freezing temperatures for long. So our ancestors made a decision that went against everything evolution had prepared them for. They wrapped themselves in the skins of mammoths, reindeer, cave bears. Not because it looked good, not because civilization had begun, simply because they didn't want to freeze to death. So how do scientists know roughly when this happened? The clue comes from lice. Head lice and body lice were once the same species. But body lice have one very picky requirement. They can only survive inside fine fibers pressed close to human skin. Originally, that meant body hair. Later, it meant clothing. When scientists compared the DNA of head lice and body lice, they discovered the two populations split roughly 170,000 years ago, which suggests something remarkable. Around that time, humans created an entirely new habitat. Not more body hair, clothing. The lice simply moved in, from our old hair to our new animal skins. And they've been there ever since. So one cold day, somewhere in the Ice Age, an animal hide landed on human shoulders for the very first time. At that moment, it was nothing more than a survival tool, no different from a sharpened stick or a stone knife. It carried no symbolism, no moral meaning. Anyone could wear it. Anyone needed it. Whether you had one simply depended on whether you could get your hands on a warm enough hide. No one felt ashamed for not wearing one, at least not yet. This could have remained a simple story about survival. Humans got cold, humans invented clothing, problem solved. Except that's not what happened. Because once clothing solved the problem of warmth, it quietly became something else. How does a tool for staying alive become something that controls the human heart? The answer lies in a silent power struggle inside Ice Age tribes. Picture one of those tribes. Resources are scarce. The winters are brutal. Not everyone can bring down a mammoth. A thick, intact animal hide isn't easy to earn. It takes skill, strength, courage, sometimes luck, sometimes your life. Slowly, differences begin to emerge. The strongest hunters wear the largest, warmest hides from powerful animals. The elderly, the children, the less successful hunters, they're left stitching together scraps just to stay warm. And
almost without anyone noticing, those hides begin to mean something beyond survival. Clothing becomes a signal. A giant predator's pelt says this person is capable, strong, respected, someone who provides. Worn out clothes, or hardly any clothes at all, begin to suggest something else: weakness, poverty, failure. Eventually, an unwritten rule takes shape inside the tribe. If you're dressed properly, you belong. If you aren't, people start seeing you differently, as weaker, as an outsider, maybe even as someone who doesn't fit. And just like that, clothing completes its first transformation. No longer just protection from the cold. Now it's a visible symbol of status, power, belonging. Up to this point, the story seems familiar. Expensive clothes signal wealth. Cheap clothes don't. That still feels true today. But here's the real question. Can social status alone explain what happens when your clothes accidentally come undone in public? That instant surge of panic, your racing heart, your burning face, the overwhelming urge to disappear. Those aren't just thoughts, they're physical reactions. So where do they come from? To answer that, we have to confront something that mattered even more than hunger, even more than freezing: being cast out by the tribe. Today, being excluded from a friend group or ignored at work can be painful. But you're still alive. 17,000 decades ago, being rejected by your tribe wasn't social discomfort. It was a death sentence. Alone in the Ice Age wilderness, you couldn't hunt large animals. You couldn't survive long winters. If you got sick, no one cared for you. Your future held only two possibilities: freeze, or become something else's dinner. In that world, belonging wasn't a luxury. It was survival. Evolution is ruthlessly practical. If a psychological mechanism helps you stay alive, it gets passed on, generation after generation. So over countless lifetimes, our brains built an emotion unlike any other: shame. Shame wasn't invented as a moral virtue. It wasn't created by civilization. At its core, it's an ancient emergency alarm. Imagine an early human breaking one of the tribe's unwritten rules, showing up naked when everyone else is dressed. Instantly, the alarm goes off. Your heart pounds, your face burns, your body shakes. Every instinct screams, hide. Because your brain is delivering one brutally simple message: keep breaking the group's rules, and the group may abandon you. If the group abandons you, you die. To escape that unbearable feeling, our ancestors did exactly what the brain wanted: blend in. Put the hide back on. Look like everyone else. Stay with the tribe. Stay alive. That harsh little alarm system worked. It helped generations of vulnerable humans survive an unforgiving world. But our ancestors could never have imagined what would happen 170,000 years later. The emergency system built for surviving Ice Age tribes never shut off. Now look around. You're not worried about freezing because you forgot your animal hide. You're not in danger of being eaten because you're alone. And yet, how many times have you stood in front of your closet, trying on outfit after outfit, feeling like somehow none of them are good enough? How often have you walked into a room full of strangers, suddenly convinced everyone is looking at you, judging you, making you painfully aware of where to put your hands? How often has a missing logo or an unfashionable brand quietly made you feel like you didn't measure up? We usually dismiss these feelings: vanity, overthinking, insecurity, something we should simply get over. But maybe that's the wrong way to see them. These feelings aren't evidence that something is wrong with you. They're echoes.
echoes of an alarm system that first evolved around 170,000 years ago and has never stopped running. When you're frozen in front of your closet, the oldest part of your brain is whispering, "If you look too different, you might not belong. If you don't belong, you're in danger." When you feel painfully self-conscious in a crowd, that's your ancient ancestors speaking across thousands of generations. Be careful. The group is watching. Our bodies live in a modern world, a world where food is plentiful, shelter is common, and one awkward social moment is almost never life or death. But our brains, the part that decides whether we feel safe, still carry software written for the Ice Age. It hasn't fully realized the world has changed. It's still trying to protect us using rules that once kept our ancestors alive. And maybe understanding that allows us to see ourselves with a little more kindness. Maybe the anxiety you feel about your appearance, your clothes, or how other people see you isn't a personal failure. It's a survival instinct, one carved into your nervous system by countless generations who paid for it with fear, and sometimes with their lives. So the next time you're standing in front of your closet, frustrated because nothing feels right, try telling yourself something simple. I know what's happening. This isn't just about today's outfit. It's an ancient part of me, afraid of being left behind. I see that fear. And today, I'm safe. Maybe real growth isn't about erasing that ancient fear. After all, it was built over hundreds of thousands of years. Maybe real growth is simply learning to shake its hand, thank it for trying to protect you, and keep walking forward anyway.